It is time for a new video in the Sugaridoo Bernina quilt along. We are going to make part 5, row 4. Hi there! Welcome to the Sugaridoo channel. My name is Irene and today we are going to make part 5, row 4 in our quilt along. And this is what we will be making. This row is called That Way and we will be making a French braid, chevron, fishbone kinda row. Super fun, and we are going to do a little improv if you're up for it. So I am going to give you the measurements and the instructions on how I made this, but it would be so fun if you go ahead and vary with the width of the strips or the placement of the strips, but more on that later in this video. You're watching this video, so probably you're already on the Sugaridoo Bernina quilt along train. But just in case if you're new here, this video belongs to a series on a quilt along. We are making a row for our quilt every 4 weeks, and this is part 5 already. In total there will be 12 rows, and with those 12 rows we are making an awesome quilt. We have a great community on Facebook where everybody is helping each other, with thousands of quilters from over the whole world who are participating in this quilt along. It's such fun. So yeah, if you're new here and you want to join the Sugaridoo Bernina quilt along, I have quilt kits still available, so hop over to the Sugaridoo website if you're interested in that. You can find the link somewhere in the screen and also in the description of this video below. And if you're joining, make sure to hop on our Facebook group, because that's a place where people ask questions and help each other and show pictures of what they are making, so you can see other fabric choices. It's just an awesome happy place to be. Everybody is so supportive. Thank you all for being there and participating. I'm super excited to get sewing again with you, and I can't wait to see how you're going to do with this row. So let's start with the materials that we need for this row. Today we will need our orange fabric, and of course your accent fabric and the backing fabric. And for other materials you will only need a rotary cutter, inch rulers and a cutting mat, and of course your sewing machine and an iron. So let's start with cutting our fabrics. First going to use my longer ruler. In the first video, of course, in our series I showed you how you can cut with either a long or a short ruler, but in this case I'm going to use my longer one. Let's give this a press first. There we go, much better. So the first thing I'm going to do is to cut a strip of 4 inch. For that I will just make sure that my edges are straight. So trimming off this little piece. And then I'm going to trim off a strip of 4 inch. And that is because we need a little square of 4 by 4 inch. So to cut that, I'm just going to cut a 4 inch strip. And from that strip I'm going to cut my 4 inch square. There we go, this little square is going to be the start of our row. And now I can cut this strip in half so that I have 2 strips of 2 inch wide. These strips I'm just going to set aside. And I'm going to cut another strip of 2 inches. There we go. That's 3 strips of 2 inch wide, and now I'm going to cut 2 of 1.5 inch wide. that is that. So now my last strip is going to be 1 inch. And I'm going to cut 2 of those. So that is for our main fabric. And then for the accent fabric, I'm going to cut a strip of 2 inch. If you want to, you can use your little strip that was left over from our first video, so our first row. In that cutting scheme I wrote down save for later, and that strip is 2 inch wide, so you can also use that one. But I think I've already used it, or it's somewhere on my fabric pile, but if you still have that lying around, then you can use that for now. So a 2 inch strip of background fabric, or accent fabric, and now my background fabric. Let's see, what do I have on this side? Yeah. So here a little piece of fabric is missing. So let's use the other side to cut. And for my background fabric, I'm going to cut strips of 1.5 inch wide. So that are all the strips that we need. So let's put this away for the next row. And then we need to cut these strips in smaller pieces. So it depends on the width of the strip, what kind of pieces you need to cut. So for this one, the 1.5 inch long strip, you will need to cut pieces of 3.5 and 4.5 inch. Just going to give them a quick press. So for accuracy, it's always better to first press your fabric and then cut it, of course. We want to have 25 of each, so 25 of the 3.5 and 25 of the 4.5. So I've just cut up the whole strip so that I have a little bit extra when I need it. So these are the 1.5 inch wide strips. And I also had 1.5 inch wide strips from my orange fabric. And for this is the same. These strips you can also cut up in pieces of 3.5 and 4.5 inch wide. And you just need the same amount of the 3.5s and 4.5s. So just cut as many as you can from the strip, and then make sure that you have an even amount. So these 1 inch strips can be cut up in pieces of 4 and 3.5 inch. And then for the 2 inch wide strips, that is your main fabric and also the accent fabric. I'm going to cut pieces of 5 inch wide and 3.5 inch wide. So from my accent fabric, I just cut one set, so one of each. But from the main fabric, I'm going to cut everything up again in as much pieces as I can. There we go, and that's everything cut. So let's pile this up a bit. And there we have all the building blocks for this week's row. So what we are going to make is this braid or chevron or fishbone row, and we are going to use these pieces for it. And in this row you can see that I did a little bit something different with my accent fabric, and you can do that too if you like. So now I have cut this for my accent fabric, so I will get one arrow like this in my accent fabric. But if you'd like, you can cut multiple pieces for your accent fabric and play around a little bit with where you place your accent fabric, and also the order of the width of the different arrows. You can vary with that, so you can play around a little bit with it. I am just going to lay all these piles next to my sewing machine and start sewing with this square as a starter. So this little piece over here is this one. So that's what we are going to start with. And from that, I'm just going to grab each time a piece from here and sew it to this side, and then a piece from here and sew it over there. And then I'm just going to pick whatever size I feel like. So I can do a few of the thinner ones next to each other, or alternate, or well, just play around a little bit. And if you would like to make exactly what I'm making, so I want exactly to copy the row that I'm doing, I will post the order of the width of my strips in the Bernina blog. So of course you can read the instructions over there, but also the exact order of the pieces that I use I will place over there. But I would like to challenge you, just play around a little bit with the width of your strips. So yeah, your choice. Copy what I'm doing and make the same, or just go ahead and play around a little bit. Okay, so time now to start sewing, and we're going to start with our square and a short piece of your background fabric, and we're just going to sew that together like so. So I am lining up the corners and placing my fabric on top of each other like this, and then just sew them together with a 1/4 inch. So again, I'm using my Bernina foot. It's the 97D, and that has a perfect 1/4 inch, so that is lovely to work with. And that just has a nice 1/4 inch edge, which just helps me guide my fabric along my foot. There we go. Very first strip attached. So that is the start of our row. And our row is going to go in this direction. So my next strip is going here. And that will make the first arrow of the row. But first I'm going to give this a press. I'll just press to one side for this row. Like so, and then place my new strip on top of this. And I'm lining it up like this. So I'm lining it up over here. So I'm lining it up over here in this corner. Yeah, and then sewing along this edge. So I can show you that again. So this is what we had. Then I'll line it up in the corner over here, and then sew along this edge on the side. And just take your time to align those pieces. The better you cut them, align them, and more accurate you sew them, the more accurate your row will be. That is the first arrow finished. And that is what it looks like. So we will stack arrows on top of this, and then of course the edge will be with all those pointy things on the outside, but we will leave it just like that until the whole row is finished, and then we will trim off the sides of this row. So now I'm just going to pick one of these. Let's start with a 1.5 inch strip. But yeah, each time I will just pick one of them randomly and build my row like that. And now how to add the next piece. So all the short strips are going to be on the bottom of the row. So this is the first arrow that we made, and when I want to attach now a new piece, I'm just going to check where the shorter piece was, and that's on this side. So we are going to build our row from here all the way to there. So I'm taking my next short piece and lining it up at this corner. So here we go, lining it up like that, and then I will sew it over here. There we go, so I've sewn it over there, and then I can fold it open with my iron. So that is nicely attached, and then the bigger piece is just going to go on this side. See? So that is how I'm going to add more and more arrows to it. So again, I'm always going to line up with this corner on this side. So this piece is going to be lined up over here just like so, and then sew through here. So there we have another piece attached. Just press it open. And that is what we will be continuing doing. So alternating attaching your background strips and your main fabric strips, and just play around with the order that you will use. So again, this is the corner that we want to line it up with. I'm taking my shorter strip that goes on the bottom of the row. So this is going to be the left side of my row. That's going to be on the bottom, and I will just sew it like so. And let me take a look at my already finished row. So this one has the accent fabric over here, and just let me measure. That is around the 10-inch mark in your row. So when you want to measure when it's time to put your accent fabric, of course you can play around with it, but when I put this over here, then I will continue making my row until here, and then I will place my accent fabric strip. So yeah, that's the plan, and the rest of the row just sew along. As your row gets longer and longer, it gets a little bit harder to maneuver around your sewing machine. And you do want to make sure that you're sewing your strips straight on. So let me show you the few last strips that I'm going to show. So here I'm lining up a little piece of my background fabric, and then I'm making sure that my row is coming in from this angle, so that my lines are straight, and that I just have my row over here. So all the way from here I have it up to there, so that you're not having the long piece, for example, on this side, and then trying to sew it like this, because then it will be pulling a little bit to that direction. So just have to row from the bottom so that side, when you're adding your first strip. Let me sew this one. There we go. And then I'm going to press it. And then when I'm going to add the longer strip over here, I am going to turn the whole row and let it fall off my sewing table over here, so then it will come in from this direction. So I will have the whole thing over there so that it is not pulling on me while I'm sewing. That way my seams will get them as straight as possible. So when adding my first short strip, I will put it over here and have my row come in from this side. Then give it a press. And when adding the other strip, I will have my row coming in from this side, so that it is nice and flat and not pulling on my fabric. So this row is coming along nicely. It's already very long. Let's measure it against the row that I already finished for a different quilt. If it is long enough. Almost. I guess it only needs one more arrow of my background fabric, and then it's done. Very exciting. So then we can start cutting up this row, well, the sides of the row, to make it a nice, to make the edges nice and straight. So with this row, you just want to continue until your row is 70.5 inches long. That I am now going to measure. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to fold my row in half and then take it to my cutting mat. So when it is folded in half, the whole row should be 70.5 inch. So when I fold it in half, it should be 35.25 inch. Let's see on my sewing table, on my cutting mat, how long it is. And my cutting mat is 36 inches, so that is perfect. Let's see. Yeah, that is exactly long enough. Let me show you. So I folded my row in half and then laid it on my cutting mat, and my cutting mat is 36 inches, and that means that it's long enough. So I folded it in half so these parts are sticking out. That is just long enough. Yeah, so now it's time to trim the sides. Okay, so there we go. This is the row that I just sewn, and now it's time to trim it. I'm first going to trim off this side because that needs to be straight, and my point of reference is going to be my center line of the arrow points. And as you can see, this is quite stretchy. This is just because this direction in the fabric is the most stretchy part. So there is some wiggle room in this, but you do want to try to keep it straight and don't stretch it too much. But yeah, just know that it's pretty stretchy. So just going to check if my line is lying quite straight. So you see some of the points are exactly matching and some of the points are a little bit off. yeah, so like I said, it is stretchy, so you could even manipulate your row a tiny bit in order to have it straight-ish. But what I think is more important is that your fabric is laying kind of flat instead of that the row of points is exactly on one line. So having your fabric lying flat is way more important. So what I'm then going to do is I am going to line up one line over those points, and then I'm going to chop off my fabric over here. So I'm just chopping off my square at the end so that the end of the row is straight, and that is going to be my starting point. So what I'm going to do now is line up this side on my cutting mat, and then I see I didn't even cut this one straight, so let me start with that. Oops. That one should at least be straight, of course. Much better. So now at least this one is straight. And then I'm going to line up my row with some lines on my mat. So what I'm going to do is try to see that these points are all crossing roughly the same line, and on this side as well, because that gives me direction that I'm not laying my row like this. See, now it's exaggerated of course, but I can put my row like this and have my fabric still kind of flat, but it's of course not straight anymore. So I'm using my background fabric pieces as a guide and putting those roughly on the same line. So then this should be fairly straight. Fairly straight is enough. So the width of the thing should be 4 inches in total. That includes seam allowance. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put my ruler on top of here and line up the 2-inch line with the center points of the arrows. So what I want is to have my ruler lined up with my mat, because I lined up those points with my mat, so this direction is the straight direction. And now I'm lining up my ruler like so. So here I'm crossing the arrow points, and here I'm missing them a bit, but that's perfectly fine. You won't even notice that when it's done. So I'm going to cut. Am I? Yes. There we go. Very exciting part. So the total width is going to be 4 inches. Look at that. That is so exciting. Okay, so now this part is chopped off. What I need to do is also chip off this part. Yeah, and I'm just going to turn the whole thing so that it is easier for me to cut. But now I can right away line up this part with my cutting mat. So I'm lining it up over here with my cutting mat, and then just placing my ruler on here and making sure that this is 4 inches. There we go. Yep, looks good. So now I can trim this. And there we have also the second, the other side trimmed off. So this is going to be our row, but of course also the rest of our row needs to be trimmed. So I'm going to repeat this process and cutting my row all the way to the end. So I'm going to line up this little part of my row on my cutting mat, and then I'm doing kind of the same thing as I did at the beginning. I'm going to line up my row, looking at the pointy parts of my backing fabric, and also on this side just looking at the pointy part of my backing fabric where they cross this line. So that looks good to me. And then just continue trimming it, placing my ruler, of course lining it up over here, and then also checking the pointy parts here of the arrows, and I'm also lining it up with this line of my mat. That should be all aligned, but because sewing like this makes your row very stretchy, there is going to be some imperfections, almost always I would say. But I really don't mind imperfections in my quilting. It is just going to look awesome, and as soon as you remove the ruler, no one is going to tell if those pointy parts are exactly aligned. And of course it's nice to strive to making it kind of perfect and doing your best, but perfect I think shouldn't be the goal. There we go. Ta-da-dum! Awesome. Final part. There we go. Ta-da! So here is your finished row. And I'm just going to continue and cut my row to 70.5 inch. So for that I folded it in half, and I have my fold line over here, and then this end should be at 35.25 inch, so that when you fold it open it will be 70.5 inch. So this is laying nice and flat. It's lined out over the bottom of my mat, and it's ending at 35.25. So let me trim this one over here, and then this one is finished and also at the correct length. Ta-dam! Dum, 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 dum. Yay! There it is. So this is 70.5 inches long. It's done. It's done. And I know some of you at home are waiting for the da-da-da-da. Well, here it is. Da-da-da-da. The row is finished, and it was such a fun one. Especially the cutting of the trimming of the sides is so satisfying, and I think it's a happy little row. I had fun making it, and I'm super curious if you are going to make it your own, or going to make it exactly as I made it, or maybe play around with where you put the accent fabric piece. It's all possible. There is no right or wrong in this row. Just make it your own. That would be fun, but also if you're making it exactly as I made it and as I write it down on the Bernina blog, that's also perfectly fine. So yeah, there we have it. It's done. Part 5 of our quilt along. This way, it's called row number 4. It's that's done. I had a lot of fun, and I'm very curious what you think of it. So let me know in the comments below this YouTube video what you think of it. I would love to hear. If you have any questions about this row, about the quilt along, about the giveaways, just pop them down in the comments below, or maybe take a look at the frequently asked questions blog that I just wrote for the Bernina blog. I will put all the links down in the comment section or in the description of this video. So you can find a link to the FAQ page, but also feel free to just put your comments and questions below this video. And of course you can always share this video with your quilting friends. Maybe they also want to join the Sugaridoo Bernina Quilt Along. Give a like or maybe subscribe to my channel. That's the easiest way to show your support for Sugaridoo. Thank you so much for being here, for quilting along with us, and I can't wait to see your pictures showing up on Facebook, Instagram. So exciting. That's it for this video. I'll hope to see you again next time. Bye bye!